Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar. It is called Collaborative Technologies for Telework, presented by King County Metro's WorkSmart program in Commute Seattle. My name is Nick Auble. I'm a senior transportation specialist for Commute Seattle, and we're really excited to do today's presentation. We think it's going to address a lot of the technological challenges and questions that a lot of our customers have expressed during this unique telework time. First, we just have a couple of quick housekeeping facts. So if we could click the next slide. So number one, we cannot hear or see you. So if you do have questions, please post those in the Q&A box. That is different than the chat box. So if you post something in the chat box, we may not identify it as a question immediately. So do please try and post things in the Q&A box. We're going to have a Q&A section at the very end of this webinar to address everything. So post your questions as they come up or save them for the end and post them then. And we'll try and get to everybody's questions. Second off, we are recording this webinar and we will be uploading it to our YouTube page and sending that out in our follow-up email tomorrow. We'll also be sending out all of the slides, so you'll have that to reference. Before I introduce our two panelists, we have a quick poll that I would like to have everyone complete, just so we get an idea of who is attending this and how comfortable they feel with technology. So please take a second to complete these, and then we will take a look at what people have said. Okay, I see people are still taking some time to complete this, so we'll just do maybe about 30 more seconds. Okay, so it looks like the majority of people have over 300 employees at their office. Most people feel pretty comfortable with technology, although we have a couple of people that say, you know, about 20% of the time it's a little challenging. And almost over 50% of people say that they spend 100% of their time interacting with computer or online prior to this telework era, and another 35% say 50 to 75% of the time. So it sounds like we have an attendance of people that are pretty tech savvy and require a lot of technology. So that's great, exactly the audience that we'd like to so great. Next, I would like to quickly introduce today's panelists. Bernie O'Donnell has an extensive background in many aspects of IT and telecommunications, from his experience with partner consulting, the U.S. Air Force, state government, and private sector businesses. His expertise includes tactical and strategic perspectives through his IT telecom work, serving in positions employing hands-on technical skills, as well as performing technology assessments, managerial roles, project management, strategy guidance, procurement functions, and system network implementation and optimization. He is a past president and life member of the National Association of State Technology Directors. And Drew Kalazewski is the vice president of partner consulting and has more than 25 years of experience in telecom and IT environments, including IP telephony platform assessment and implementation, telecom expense management, and complex project management. Drew has been a regular contributor of expertise for Connecticut's CT Rides program and has written several articles of telework topics, including telework success with technology, evolving telework technology, telecommuting, a smart business continuity strategy, teleworking technology easier than you think, and the telework emergency checklist. Drew has participated in CT Rides programs as a presenter at events and webinars, and also provides telework assessments for companies considering a telework program. Bernie, The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nick, and thank you all for attending. I think the poll results, certainly show there was a tendency toward larger organizations, and larger organizations may tend to have some IT support and some assistance to help people as they move to a telework environment, and smaller organizations may not have that, may rely on contract help or may rely on each other. But it's a challenge, especially in the way that we've been thrown into telework in terms of the COVID-19 crisis. Fortunately, most have seemed to have adopted it to the point where they're thinking about this may also be beneficial long-term for their organizations. And when you're thrown into something initially, the first iteration may not be all that smooth, but then as time goes on, you find there are ways you can refine and improve what you're doing, and that certainly is the case with telework. And Drew, certainly if there's something that you wish to chime in on the slides, as well as the Q&A later, feel free. And we'll also have Elham Shirazi discussing later with the Q&A.
And Bernie, I just want to interrupt really quickly and say that people are seeing it in presenter mode. So if you could just click to slideshow, that would be excellent.
All righty, I will do that. There you go. So we look forward to whatever questions you have that we can address later on in the slide presentation, and whatever we can do to help you with your questions, we look forward to doing that. So Telework Technology, from the left side of the slide, typically shows the on-premise environment that many of us are used to prior to becoming engaged in telework, what you might find in an office environment or anywhere where people are all brought together in one or a few locations that are hosted by your employer to conduct your work, and you have easy access to the people that you're working with. They're all present with you. The technology you're using is standardized typically among employees. It makes technical support and interaction very easy with any technology that you are using. Meetings and phone calls are the order of the day, and you may get some chat, some limited mobility that you use, but generally people are physically in one place. The right side of the slide indicates where you are in a telework environment, utilizing typically these days cloud technology, which you can access anywhere. Your information is there, able to be accessed from any device, from any location. You're using most typically multiple forms of communication, whereas in a office on-prem environment, everyone physically gets together. So you don't necessarily have that immediate availability of individuals, but you do find pros and cons in each model. And over time, in an ideal environment, when you can, a hybrid might be in order. I know many people who enjoy working in a office environment 1 or 2 days a week and working remotely a few days a week, and the ability to get some quiet alone time is beneficial, but the ability to get some in-person collaboration time is certainly equally beneficial. So it's nice to have the mobility and to be able to take advantage of those pros for remote work. So collaboration at the office, people typically had to be, or felt they had to be, present for meetings. People may join by conference call, but they still had to be available at that time. If they weren't available, they may miss the meeting. They may be dependent on someone to take notes for them, and in some cases, a meeting or a piece of work or a work group might be delayed just due to that that feeling we all tended to have just out of inertia that we all had to be present in one place to get some work done or to have a discussion. And the tools that we typically used were tools that were employer provided. And those tools, even though they were employer provided, they weren't necessarily provided on a one-for-one basis. Anyone who's gone to set up a meeting and found that someone else has the whiteboard, someone else has the projector, or at least the projector that works today, has been a victim of those shortages. And in a remote environment, everyone has the capability for these tools to participate, and there are some real benefits to that. The remote participation, most of the products that we're using to collaborate allow us to record the meeting. So people who may not have been able to participate in the meeting can get an exact recording and sit right through what was said or what was said about them in some cases at those meetings. So the advantages of telework quickly become evident in some of the experiences that we've all had already. And basically, we're trying to use technology as much as possible to replicate that in-person collaboration. It isn't always perfect. It's different. It's not the same as being in person, and it can't 100% take the place of being in person. In using the technology, you may be able to use video and use audio and use presence and instant messaging and some of the technological features to make up for those gaps. They can't always get the job done, but as you get used to them and as you get adept at using them and as your coworkers become used to using them, the comfort level quickly goes up. And by looking at some of the features that the different products offer, you can find things that work well for you. Those of you in a small organization, it might be pretty easy and informal to get 3 or 4 people together. But if you get in a large organization and you start talking about getting large numbers of people together on meetings or trying to collaborate and having someone facilitate that and give everyone the adequate amount of time, there are some skills to be developed along with the technology that help make that work well for people. The advantage also of the the recording, in addition to people who may not have been able to attend the meeting, even those who did attend the meeting have the ability to pull it up later and see what happened and just validate the actual work or meeting discussions that took place. So some of the collaboration technologies that are in high use are shown here, and more of them have tried to become kind of a Swiss Army knife of one tool that can do everything. And you may find that some of these products do some things well for you and some do other things well. You'll also likely find, unless you really are in an organization who has standardized on one product and who doesn't interact with many outside entities, that you're going to have to interact with people who are used to different tools, and you may need to get used to using and having multiple tools. Fortunately, a lot of them work in very similar ways. Fortunately, a lot of them are quite intuitive in terms of the way they work, and they've come to be offered in free or freemium plans, trying to get people to try the product. And you can use a product for a while, see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, try another one. But most of these products, and there are other products too, the GoToMeeting products that are all software as a service products that are quick to get up and running in a telework environment, quick to scale up, such as people had to do with the COVID crisis, to be able to get a large number of people up and running without having to physically load software on machines as they may have done in an office environment. And there's a great deal of compatibility between these products. So documents and work products can be pretty easily moved between them, because if any of them want to be useful, they do have to play well with others. So they do work well together for some things. A lot of the products also have basic levels and then higher levels of features, where some may be free, some may be different tiers of pricing. And you may want to look at them and see what you can live with, and then what you get if you do pay for a higher tier of service, if it's something that can be beneficial for you. So look at those free offers, try things out, test them with some of your coworkers, and see if you can come to a conclusion about which work well for you. But keep up with them as well, because they're constantly offering new features, and they don't stand still. The products are moving ahead and bringing more features every day. Now, video meetings, you know, in the 1960s picture phone, I have to confess, I was at the 1964 World's Fair. I am that much of a dinosaur, and I saw the picture phone that was promoted by AT&T at the time. I was not at the 1939 World's Fair, however, so let's not even go there. The technology, though, in the ideas of communicating via video have been there that long. But technologically and cost-wise, the costs have come down in terms of producing the product. The costs have come down in terms of providing the bandwidth. I think to try to do a video call back in the 60s or 70s, to the degree that anyone would do it, it would cost you something like $16 or $18 a minute for a connection back then. So it's something now that's taken for granted, in that we have the bandwidth. We're using compressed video formats that enable our phones, our tablets, our laptops, even with cellular networks, to conduct video meetings. So video meetings are beneficial, and especially in terms of trying to replace that in-person collaboration. And I think you'll find like many people, that initially there's a reluctance to video meetings. There's a feeling that if I'm on an audio conference, I can multitask, I can answer email. If it's a large meeting and I'm bored, I can do other things. If any of you have seen the recent Geico commercial, where the one lady on the call is texting on her phone while there's a video meeting, and everyone can see that, and they call her out on that. And what that tells you and illustrates is that a video meeting is very engaging. Everyone's engaged, everyone's paying attention to everyone else. And the result of that is a quicker meeting where people get down to business, and there may be a little bit of small talk, but you don't tend to have the multiple conversations that break out in even an in-person meeting. So a video meeting can sometimes be an enhancement even over an in-person meeting, and keep people engaged and keep them involved while getting some work done. And some of the next generation features of video conferencing, you know, allow artificial intelligence features and machine learning to bring features together, whether it's a background or the ability to take notes by transcribing the audio and contacting people not in attendance, and et cetera, and determining who's speaking. Microsoft has come out with this together mode, where they've found through their studies that the individual watching and participating in a video conference becomes mentally more tired by scanning across multiple tiles of people on a screen, or people popping up on a screen, and shifting their view, shifting what they're looking at in terms of the lighting, the background, the visual cues. And that by using this together mode with a glance, you can really see in something replicating an in-person meeting, you can see those visual cues and you can look at the people without having to adjust to the differing backgrounds. And they find that it's much less mentally taxing, so that if you participate in a video conference like this, and you're someone who's on video conferences a good percentage of the time or all day, you're less tired, you're less mentally tired in this mode. So this together mode has come out and will likely be adopted by many. So in terms of telecommuting or teleworking, you want to go through an assessment process, define your requirements, review the current technologies, and determine where your gaps are. But as I mentioned earlier, many of us were thrown into this. We quickly picked what we could use to telework in the COVID-19 environment, and we really didn't have the time to plan and think about research it as much as we may have otherwise chosen to do. So it might not be a bad idea after you've been at this for a while, and many of us have, is to go back and really think about your requirements, look at the technologies and think about some of the different products and test some of the different products with some of your peers and see where those products may be able to fill some gaps. So you want to optimize what you have, and you don't do that on a one-shot basis. You do it through a continuous improvement process, and something that should just be done on, depending on your organization, on some kind of a regular schedule. So in defining your requirements, different people have different needs in terms of hardware. Your mobile workers may be working on field workers with tablets and phones. Others may be working with laptops or desktops. And some of those may be a little older than what they should be in terms of capabilities. And they may have sufficed to start in this teleworking environment, but maybe they should be looked at for replacement. And looking at your applications as well, your business applications, there may be things that you did with premise-based software, working out of your own servers on site, and maybe looking at applications in the cloud might be a better idea now for any number of reasons, for file management, accessibility, backups, and restoral. The cloud would bring some features that may be beneficial. The collaboration applications that we mentioned a few minutes ago in terms of chat, and presence, and conferencing, looking at the different collaboration tools would be beneficial. And file sharing, and in dealing with some of that information sharing and file sharing, you need to consider your policies. Is this sensitive data? Is it data that anyone should be able to see? Is it public data? Is it healthcare data that needs to be protected? And you have customer data, you have employee data, you may have strategic data about your organization in terms of strategies going forward, or something that might be used in a negotiation. And that information needs to be well protected, well backed up, and secured. So there need to be policies around that, and ensuring the security of that. Thinking about your environment, again, is your employer going to provide your tools? Are you providing them? Are the files and the data we just talked about going to be on someone's personal device? Do their children have access to that device? Do other people in their home have access to the device? And everyone's environment is different. So the environment is not the same as it was in an office environment or workplace environment. And that needs to be looked at, and policies developed around that as well. So in reviewing current technology, you want to look at your word processing, spreadsheets, typical tools that people use to get the job done. And again, many of those are available in a software as a service or cloud state, and looking at the benefits of that, such as not having to do software upgrades for all these remote teleworkers, not having to separately patch machines, as if that can be done through the cloud and through some of these service-based software as a service applications. That can bring reduce a lot of headaches, a lot of IT headaches for your organization. As far as your hardware, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you do have to consider what people really need, and everyone doesn't necessarily need the same thing. Field workers need something very different from someone who's staying in one place, who's teleworking 100% of the time, and someone teleworking maybe 50% of the time might need something else. So you need to poll people, get some input from them on what they need, and try to meet their needs. As much as possible, as we all did in the beginning of the COVID crisis, you need to leverage your existing technology. It's faster to implement because you already have it, and people are familiar with it, and it saves money versus buying something and minimizes those learning curves. But leveraging existing technology is good for as far as it goes, but if it isn't getting the job done, you may need to look further. But use what you've got to the degree that you can, and then try to fill the gaps. In determining the gaps, you know, it's basically, what do you need? And a survey of your employees, or discussions among some working groups to identify this can be done. Try to get some finalization, make some decisions. You may have people who prefer one product over another, and you need to look at the pros and cons of standardizing on a product. You may be tempted to give everyone what they want, but you need to have that discussion with folks as to whether you're doing them a disservice and doing as a group by doing that, because they're having to adapt to everyone else's individual technology choices. So experiment with features as you identify and look at the new technologies and see how well it meets your budget. Use the free trials since they're out there, and many of these products have the free or freemium offerings. Take advantage of that, even if they're not your main choice, and you might find there's some advantages of them, and you might find there's some products you can continue to use for free versus having to pay for a higher tier of operations. So see what's missing, try to fill that in. There may be some nice to haves, but determine what the cost of those nice to have items are, whether financial cost or support costs, and just the ease of use to get the job done by all your employees. Protecting your online presence, as I mentioned a moment ago, you're creating information, you're looking at, reviewing, sharing, storing information, and a lot of that may be private. It may belong to a customer, it may be financial information, and it really does have to be protected. We've moved into a telework mode where I think basic connectivity and ability to collaborate seem to be the highest priority for all, because we did get thrown into this. But really, the highest priority should be the protection of data. And you don't hear too much about that when you talk about people being thrown into telework. You hear more about, can they get this piece of hardware or a piece of software up and running to allow some collaboration? And while that's important, if they get up and running and they share information a little too widely, and that information gets leaked out, there could be some serious problems. So you want to protect your online presence in multiple ways, in terms of secure connections, in terms of secure data, and in terms of secure behavior. And the secure connections, many of us are using Wi-Fi, cable internet, wireless internet through cellular companies, and the network and infrastructure needs to be looked at in terms of how secure is it. If you're using guest Wi-Fi or coffee shop Wi-Fi somewhere, or at a library, the potential for someone to get access to that with certain software and intercept information is high. So you need to apply some security to that connectivity through VPNs or virtual private networks, through encryption or multi-factor authentication. And the VPNs essentially give you a private connection, an encrypted private connection using the public internet, or it can be over that public Wi-Fi, but it's protected from anyone looking at it. The multi-factor authentication, typically in addition to the normal username password authentication that we use to access most systems, is another step that requires you to more or less provide another password type bit of data, so that I give a username, I give a password, and then maybe the system sends a text message to a different device or an email to an email account, and then I have to put that data in to authenticate. So multi-factor authentication can be important to keep those connections secure. You do need policies on the secure data. How often are backups done? What is this information? 90% of my email is probably of no consequence, but there may be some email that's of great consequence if it leaked out or someone got that information. It could be financially damaging to someone. It could be, if it was healthcare information, that it could be embarrassing to someone if they didn't want someone to know that. And you can't email by email determine, is this a high or low security email? We'd all be tied up in knots trying to determine whether each email we send or each work product we put out was of a certain level of security. So we want to let the systems do that, and the systems will largely do that, but we have to set policies, and you need to have those discussions among your employees to determine how is customer information going to be handled. And there are a lot of model policies you can Google and search or check with peer organizations to come up with some good policies on that. Above all is secure behavior, because no matter what you put in place for security, if people don't behave in a way to take advantage of those systems and utilize those systems, it's all for naught. If people are going to click on a link that's going to somehow create a ransomware threat or other threat to your company, your organization, all the hardware and technology and software and security capability you buy is bypassed. So you need to do testing and continuous clear communication and training about this with your employees. I was aware of one organization who did some testing on this, and it was a large organization, and they sent emails out to their employees with links such as, here's a new federal holiday that's going to be enacted, or things like that people would probably have some interest in, and people clicked on them. And then they got a message back saying, this was only a test, but this was a phony email, and you clicked on the link and you should not have done that. And above all, this situation I'm talking about, it was the IT staff that was tested, the people who knew about this stuff. And most of our employees are not IT staff. So there needs to be frequent employee awareness and guidance and training on secure behavior. The last week, Garmin International was a victim of ransomware, or someone clicked on an email link, and for a number of days, the company couldn't operate some of their customer-facing information where they provided information on navigation systems for aircraft and ocean-going vessels. And fortunately, it fell at a time where people didn't need to do a lot of those updates because they happen on certain calendar dates. But the company was in a bad way for a few days, unable to communicate through the normal portals to their customer base. So I don't know whether or not they paid the ransom on the ransomware, but It's very costly to an organization to be a victim of these security threats. So develop an awareness of fraud, and the change that we've all undergone, and any changes usually have some element of risk because people are doing things differently. Emails and software and the devices we're using may be different than what we're used to, and there are lots of bad actors out there who capitalize on these vulnerabilities. So you've probably seen, you know, fraudulent charities and sites selling fraudulent products to try to rope you in on these things. And although we've heard about it over and over and over and over again, it needs to be a regular topic of conversation with your employees to protect your organization from online scams. In terms of ransomware, if in most cases with ransomware, where someone's clicking on a link and allowing someone access to their systems through a ransomware scam, the company looking for the ransom has usually locked up or controlled access to the company's own data. So the company does not have access to their data on their customers, on their business, their financials, whatever it happens to be. And unfortunately, many of them are paying the ransom because it's cheaper for them to do that than to try to recreate all that. And in reality, the one thing they could have done to protect themselves was file backups, just simple file backups. If a company has file backups and can walk away from a server that's been compromised and just get rid of it and go to the backups, it may cost them some time to restore their systems, but they're not completely victimized by losing that data. So file backups are paramount above all that, and you know, back up your data frequently, whether it's just because you might lose your laptop, your phone, your tablet device, but also on an organization-wide level. Many of you may have heard a lot of press reports about Zoom bombing. I've heard fewer of them lately, but there were a lot initially with the beginning of the COVID crisis, and folks were getting access to Zoom meetings and disrupting them. Meeting links were posted in public places, or there weren't passwords. The features of these systems generally allow good control over security. And the problem with Zoom, the good news about Zoom was it's very easy to grab. It was free. You could get up and running quickly. But the bad news about Zoom is it was free. You could get it up and running quickly. And people did so without really understanding the features. So if you understand the features, you know there are protections in there, and the company has added more to try to protect you from anyone interrupt. And Zoom is one product. Any product can certainly fall victim to this. This also underscores the need in terms of your entire security posture to ensure that you apply software updates, because those software updates usually have those security updates and will keep you current and safe. In terms of resolving problems on site, many of us had on-site IT staff, on-site tech support, people who you could literally walk down the hallway and poke your head in their office and say, I need help, or call a help desk where someone would physically come and help you. And depending on your organization, you may or may not have a help desk, but at a bare minimum, you have each other. And it's a good idea to form some committees and have discussions about your problems. Don't keep them to yourself, because you'll find that these products are in use by millions of people, and millions of people have had the same problems that you've had. It's rare that someone's creating a unique problem these days. So you're finding yourself now with dealing with problems on your home internet or conference call issues and setting up a home office. And in terms of your home internet, you could use cellular as a backup. Many of the cable companies and telephone companies have pretty good online resources and frequently asked questions. You can go through some of the tree type menus to troubleshoot and see what problems are. Hold test meetings for conference calls, start the calls early, and just form some groups to have those test calls and try out each individual little feature. In terms of your home office setup, certainly invest in a headset. The background noise, if someone is using a computer speaker and microphone, can be disruptive. If you hear feedback or echo on a call, it's typically because someone has their computer turned up and the feedback loop between the speakers and microphone and the computer are causing that echo or feedback. So use a headset. In the video calls, check your background, that you don't have a bulletin board with confidential information, that you have good lighting, test it, and ask your coworkers what they think. If what they're seeing when they have a video call with you is working out, and they'll be the first to tell you if something needs to change, I'm sure. So in terms of recommendations for a smooth transition, try to implement solutions that will grow with your company. Hopefully this COVID crisis will end at some point soon, and we won't just drop our telework environment and move back to an on-site environment. I would expect we'd use this. We'd use this for if there's some other disaster, if a building shuts down, if people want to work on the weekend and don't have access to the building, if people are home on medical leave and can't commute back to the office but still could work. There are long-term benefits to telework, and I think people have understood now that they want to continue that. Certainly develop that video culture. It will keep everybody engaged. It will make people feel a little less out there isolated from the rest of their workforce, and it will keep the meetings crisp and moving along with people focused on each other and on the subject at hand. So on your steps to success, to develop and optimize your collaboration environment, build on those things that you're comfortable with. Seek some help with some things that you're not. Don't just ignore or figure you don't need those things, but look for help with those things. And as for resources, form some peer groups. Certainly you can look on the internet, you can Google things, you can find them out individually. But if you have discussions among yourselves, among 4 or 5 or more people, you'll have a little richer conversation than something you might just read online, and you can help each other out by experiencing or sharing your experiences with each other, and seek consultative assistance if necessary, because the amount of time you're going to spend teleworking and the investment in your time and your organization is significant enough that if you spend a little bit of time getting that assistance and getting your telework environment optimized, it'll just pay tremendous dividends down the road in savings of time and money, and making the whole experience much more enjoyable. And with that, I'd like to give the floor to Elham Shirazi.
Thank you so much, Bernie. I'm just trying to share my video as well. I am Elham Shirazi, and I am lead consultant for WorkSmart, which is a service that has been funded by King County Metro to provide employers with one-on-one consultation and webinars like this one for improving your work from home programs and hopefully turning them into stronger telework programs. And we're here to assist you with all the steps, even if there are concerns within your work site right now. We know that only 40 to 50% of the population can be teleworking, but a lot of this happened overnight. or within the first week, where employees just basically, if they were allowed, grabbed whatever equipment they could and went home with no policies, no procedures, no guidelines. So we're here to come in, do an assessment of your work site, do focus groups with the teleworkers and with their managers to see how your program is going, give you some advice on what is a proper program and what are some legalities that need to be followed. And we also believe very strongly in training employees and their managers about teleworking and about how to telework better under COVID-19. Obviously, we've had to learn everything by ourselves, but we're probably better equipped now to create this flexibility that hopefully will sustain beyond COVID-19. And whether or not it's going to be fully at home or 2 to 3 days at home and the rest of it on site, those are determinations that organizations are making now. From everything that I've heard about what's going on in King County, it seems like offices are not in a rush to return, and in many cases we're hearing the dates such as January of 2021 and July of 2021 being mentioned. But these are just, at this point, we really don't know. We can also help you meet the requirements of your CTR because obviously every trip not taken benefits your average vehicle ridership. I wanted to also let you know that Bernie and Drew, Bernie who conducted this presentation, are also consultants on this program. So we can help you with your technology needs. We are vendor neutral. We don't represent any vendor, and can come in and do an assessment, or you can ask us your hard questions, and we can hopefully improve the technology and telephony side of your operations. So the best way to get in touch with us, let's go to the next slide, please, Bernie, is basically, www.kingcounty.gov/WorkSmart will get you to our website. We have some downloadable materials there, which could be of interest to you. They're templates. You can also just go there and request assistance from us. My email is also here if you'd rather just send an email to me, and my phone number is included. And we are very grateful to Commute Seattle for having hosted this webinar. Don't forget, next Thursday we have another one, and at the same time, and the focus of that one will be really best tips for teleworkers. So that's all I have to say today, and I think we should open up for questions.
Thank you, Elham, and thank you, Bernie and Drew, for joining us today and sharing such valuable information. We do have about 10 minutes left for questions, so now would be a great time to enter your questions into the Q&A box. I also wanted to mention that while we're going to include it in our follow-up email, I just submitted a link to a feedback form in the chat box. So if everyone has a minute or two to complete that feedback form, it's really appreciated by Elham and the WorkSmart program. We'll be including the slides in PDF form in our follow-up email, as well as a recording of this webinar in our email, which will be sent out tomorrow. So now, if anyone has any questions, please enter those into the Q&A box.
While you're waiting for questions, Nick, Bernie here, I just, it's curious how, Drew and I tend to be the technology side, and Elham really has a just tremendous depth of knowledge in the human, the HR side and the people side of all this. And, when you think of something like video conferencing, it's a fairly technical, with everything behind it, a technical operation. But the acceptance of it, the fact that it was technologically available and in use over the past decade or so, but nothing has made video conferencing take off as fast as this crisis and people's acceptance of it. So it really has little to do with the technology and more to do with the human factors and that side of things with how this has taken off and how it's gained acceptance.
Yeah, it's definitely, people are teleworking during a pandemic. It's not your typical telework experience. And I think it has opened a lot of eyes for work sites and businesses that previously didn't offer a telework option to really utilize it as an opportunity and a resource for their business. We do have a question about Zoom fatigue and what approaches or methods you guys might suggest to diminish or reduce employees' experience with Zoom fatigue.
Elham, I don't know if you'd like to chime in on that.
Bernie, I actually wanted you to answer that, and I can chime too.
Okay.
Chime in too. You want to
because
take
I think that really touches on both sides. It's truly something on the technology side as well as the human factors side. And on the technology side, I think there are things you can do in terms of the lighting, the type of screen you're using, the type of system you're using that will facilitate any of your conferences. But if you are moving quickly from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting in an audio conference format with just audio without video, where your mind can wander a little bit, you can multitask due to the fact that you're not on camera. I think it's a little less fatiguing than if you're running from one call to another in terms of a video call and keeping yourself engaged. If you could imagine going in 30-minute or 1 hour increments, one after another, like many of us have meetings scheduled, it does get fatiguing. And I think that it does reach a point where you simply need to turn down some meetings, offer alternate times and things of that nature. But technologically, if you have the proper lighting so you're not getting fatigue from your screen, the proper size screen, and the proper environment in terms of comfort level, the standing desk or sitting desk, the ability to get up and move around can all help that. I don't know, Drew, if you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that you said, Bernie. And, I think from a technology perspective, there are some things you can do as far as adjusting the brightness of your screen to try to make things a little better for you. And you could change that throughout the day. So if it's sunnier out, make an adjustment, that type of thing. Some of the things that I've done actually is I've taken meetings in different rooms in my house just so that I get a different perspective. I know that's not a technology type of a solution, but I think the fatigue is a very real thing, because I think a lot of us are used to perhaps going back-to-back meetings, but a lot of times you're in a physical environment where you get to leave that meeting, go in another room, maybe your next meeting is in another room, or it's across campus and that type of thing. And now we're in a situation where we're kind of a lot of times just sitting in the same place. And I find the way to break the fatigue is really more physical and probably less technology related, but very helpful to, if it's possible, take a break, end that meeting a few minutes early if you can, and schedule some time for yourself if you can, block out some time so that you have a little bit of time to recover. But yeah, the fatigue is definitely a real thing, and just looking for ways, I guess, really to take care of yourself. I'm not so sure there's too much of a technological solution except to make sure that, as far as the way that you're sitting and things like that, you relieve pressure on your back and things like that. But I think without an assessment of your work environment, maybe the best thing is to get up and stretch once in a while, or maybe change your environment a little bit if you can.
I think
Well,
those
then
are all.
don't go
Sorry.
ahead, Elham.
No, I just want to say those are all great suggestions. Some of what I've been reading, and as you've both mentioned, unfortunately, Zoom fatigue and work from home fatigue are real, and we need to find ways to get away from those and resolve it. So a mix of audio and video is probably good, you know, so don't, you know, it's sometimes it's just easy to pick up a phone and call someone. You don't have to see each other. And, you know, so we've forgotten how to use our phones in this pandemic. And a second, I read a very, very thoughtful article written by, I think it was a CEO of Deloitte, who, you know, talked about have 15-minute meetings, or when you usually have 1 hour meetings, make it 45 and give 15 minutes back to people in their days. A third, you know, tip that I've read about, and I think is probably a really great idea, is no meetings on Fridays. So what a lot of organizations are doing, saying across the board, it could be another day, but no Zooms, no Teams, you know, so people can focus and get their work done.
Yeah, I think that's all wonderful advice. Thank you, guys. Everyone at one time or another, I'm sure, has experienced some form of Zoom fatigue. So really thinking mindfully as an organization about how many back-to-back meetings you have scheduled, spreading them out more evenly throughout a day or throughout a week is really helpful, I think, for your eyes, for your body, for your mind. So it doesn't look like we have any further questions. I might give people about 20 seconds more. Again, I entered that feedback form in the chat box. So if everyone doesn't mind taking a second to complete that, that would be wonderful. And if there are no further questions, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank Bernie and Drew and Elham for hosting and sharing such valuable resources. We will be sending a follow-up email with all of this information included, a recording and slides, as well as the feedback form. Otherwise, as Elham mentioned, I think we might give a couple minutes back to everyone in their busy Thursday afternoon. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Everyone.